I was 67 years old when I learned that sometimes the truth arrives not through a conversation, but through a phone left on a kitchen counter. Hello. My name is Margaret Bennett, though most people call me Maggie. I live in a small town called Millbrook, about 40 minutes outside Portland, Maine. Or at least, I used to live there. What happened after that phone call changed everything, and I suppose that's why I'm sitting here now, telling you this story. Let me start from the beginning. I was born in 1956, the middle child in a family of 5 kids. My father worked at the shipyard, and my mother took in sewing to help make ends meet. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and back then, that felt like enough. I learned early that you kept your head down, did your work, and didn't complain. That's just how we were raised. I met my husband Thomas at a church picnic when I was 23. He was tall and quiet, with hands that were always a little stained from the woodshop where he worked. We married a year later in a small ceremony, and by 25, I was pregnant with our son Christopher. Thomas and I bought our house in 1985. It wasn't much at first, a 2-bedroom Cape Cod with peeling paint and a yard full of dandelions. But it was ours. We spent every weekend for 2 years fixing it up. Thomas rebuilt the porch. I painted every room myself, standing on a ladder with Christopher napping in a playpen nearby. We planted a cherry tree in the backyard, and I put in a small vegetable garden by the fence. That house became more than walls and a roof. It held Christopher's first steps, his birthday parties, the Christmas mornings when he'd race downstairs before dawn. It held the sound of Thomas's laugh, the smell of his coffee every morning at 6. It held our life. When Thomas died 3 years ago, a heart attack, sudden and cruel, I thought I might die too. The house felt too big without him. Too quiet. I'd catch myself setting 2 plates on the table, forgetting for just a moment that he was gone. Christopher started calling more often after that. He'd always been a good son, busy but thoughtful. He worked in insurance, lived 2 hours away with his wife Nicole. She was younger than him by almost 10 years, polished in a way I never was. She wore heels to the grocery store and talked about branding and aesthetics like they were the most important things in the world. I tried to like her. I really did. But there was something about the way she smiled at me, tight, like her mouth was holding back words she didn't want to waste. About a year after Thomas passed, Christopher suggested I come stay with them for a while. He said the house was too much for me to handle alone, that I shouldn't be lifting heavy things after my hip surgery. I didn't want to be a burden, but my doctor agreed, and Christopher kept insisting, so I said yes. I thought it would be temporary. A few months, maybe. Just until I was stronger. I should have known better. At first, I tried to make myself useful. I cooked dinners, folded laundry, kept the guest room neat as a pin. I watered Nicole's fiddle leaf fig even though she never thanked me for it. I walked on eggshells, careful not to use too much hot water or leave lights on too long. But no matter what I did, it was never quite right. Nicole would sigh when I asked where the recycling bin was. She'd move things I'd cleaned, rearranging them without a word, as if my touch had contaminated them somehow. Christopher worked long hours and came home exhausted, and when he was around, he seemed caught between the two of us, never quite looking either one of us in the eye. I started to feel like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September. The kind of day where the light comes in low and golden through the kitchen window, and you can smell autumn starting to creep in. I was standing at the sink washing dishes, Nicole's fancy white plates that couldn't go in the dishwasher, and Christopher had been on the phone in the living room. I heard him say goodbye and assumed he'd hung up. But he hadn't pressed the button hard enough, I guess. Or maybe the call hadn't disconnected. Either way, his phone was still on, sitting on the counter about 6 feet from where I stood. I heard Nicole's voice come through the speaker, clear as day. Is she still there? A pause. Christopher's footsteps upstairs. Chris, I'm serious. I can't do this anymore. She's always here, always underfoot. I feel like I can't breathe in my own house. I stopped moving. The dish in my hand dripped soapy water back into the sink. She's a burden, Nicole said, and her voice dropped to something like a hiss. I didn't sign up for this. You need to figure something out. My hands were still in the water. I stood there, frozen, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. Christopher said something I couldn't make out, his voice muffled and far away. Nicole laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. Well, she's not my mother. She's yours. So you deal with it. The call ended. The kitchen went silent except for the drip of the faucet. I pulled my hands out of the water and dried them slowly on the towel hanging by the stove. I looked down at the dish I'd been holding, one of the white plates Nicole loved so much, and I set it carefully in the rack. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't march into the living room and confront them. I just stood there for a long time, looking out the window at the tree in their backyard. And I thought about the cherry tree Thomas and I had planted in our yard all those years ago. That night, after they went to bed, I sat in the guest room with the lights off and opened the drawer where I kept my important papers. Underneath my sweaters and a small jewelry box was an old manila envelope. Inside was the deed to my house. I took it out and unfolded it carefully. The paper was soft with age, the ink a little faded. But there it was, clear as anything. Margaret Ann Bennett, owner. Years ago, when Christopher turned 30, he'd asked if I'd add his name to the deed. He said it would make things easier if something happened to me, for legal reasons. I'd agreed, but something, maybe stubbornness, maybe instinct, had stopped me from taking my name off. I'd left both of us on there. Joint owners. I stared at that deed for a long time. Then I folded it back up, slid it into the envelope, and put it away. That's when I knew. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life being called a burden. Not when I still had my name on something that mattered. Not when I still had choices. The next morning, I made scrambled eggs and toast, set the table, and smiled when they came downstairs. Nicole barely looked at me. Christopher kissed the top of my head and said, "Thanks, Mom," before rushing out the door. I cleaned up the kitchen, wiped down the counters, and went back to the guest room. Then I picked up my phone and called the bank. The woman at the bank looked at me over her reading glasses like I'd just told her I wanted to fly to the moon. "Mrs. Bennett, are you sure about this?" I'd called ahead and made an appointment with Linda Morrison, the same advisor who'd helped Thomas and me open our savings account 30 years ago. She had gray hair now and reading glasses on a beaded chain, but she still remembered me. "I'm sure," I said. She pulled up my account information on her computer, clicking through screens with her manicured nails. "I see your son is listed as co-owner on the property deed. Does he know you're considering selling?" I folded my hands in my lap. "Christopher is listed for convenience only. My name is the primary owner. I purchased that house with my late husband in 1985. Linda's expression softened. "I remember Thomas. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you." She looked back at her screen, then at me. "Legally, you have every right to sell. But Mrs. Bennett, this is a big decision. Family homes, they're complicated. Have you talked to Christopher about this?" I thought about Nicole's voice coming through that phone. She's a burden. No, I said, and I'd prefer to keep it confidential for now. Linda studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. All right, let me connect you with our real estate partner. They can get you an evaluation within the week. I walked out of that bank with an appointment card in my purse and my heart beating so hard I thought it might crack a rib. That night, lying in the guest room bed, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept going back to the house. Our house. The one Thomas and I had built together, piece by piece. I remembered the day we first saw it. The realtor had warned us it was a fixer-upper, which was code for falling apart. The porch sagged. The roof leaked. The kitchen cabinets hung crooked on rusty hinges. But Thomas had walked through every room with his measuring tape in his notebook, and when we stood in the backyard, looking at all that overgrown grass, he'd turned to me and smiled. We can do this, Maggie. I can fix anything that's broken. And he did. We spent 2 years bringing that house to life. Thomas rebuilt the porch with wood from a salvage yard. We painted every room ourselves soft yellow for the kitchen, pale blue for Christopher's room, cream for our bedroom. I remember standing on a ladder at 8 months pregnant, rolling paint onto the walls while Thomas held the ladder steady and told me to be careful. Our son's going to grow up in this house, he'd said. He needs to know his parents worked for it. Christopher took his first steps in the living room, holding onto the coffee table Thomas had built from reclaimed barn wood. We hung a tire swing from the oak tree out back, and Thomas pushed our boy on it for hours while I watched from the kitchen window. My hands in dishwater, my heart so full I thought it might overflow. The house held everything. Birthday parties with homemade cakes. Christopher's high school graduation photos on the front porch. The Christmas Thomas surprised me with a new stove because the old one finally died. The afternoon we planted the cherry tree together, Christopher helping us dig even though he was only 7 and mostly just got in the way. After Thomas died, the house became something different. It wasn't just memories anymore. It was proof he'd existed. Proof we'd built something that lasted. I'd walk through the rooms sometimes, running my fingers along the walls, and I could still feel him there. The porch railing he'd sanded smooth. The bathroom tiles he'd laid himself. The cherry tree in the yard that was taller than the house now. I couldn't leave it, not then, but I also couldn't take care of it alone. The lawn got too long. The gutters filled with leaves. The porch boards started to rot where Thomas had promised me they'd last 20 years. My hip hurt when I climbed the stairs. My hands shook when I tried to change a light bulb. Christopher started calling more often. Every Sunday at 10 in the morning. Mom, you doing okay? I'm fine, honey. You need anything? I can drive down this weekend. But he never did. There was always something. A work deadline. Nicole's yoga retreat. A friend's wedding. The calls got shorter. The visits stopped altogether. Then came the invitation. Christopher and Nicole drove down one Saturday in October, about 6 months after Thomas died. I made pot roast and mashed potatoes, set the table with the good china, even put out cloth napkins. Nicole picked at her food. Christopher ate quickly, barely tasting it. Halfway through dinner, he put down his fork and looked at me. Mom, Nicole and I have been talking. We think you should come stay with us for a while. I set down my water glass carefully. That's kind of you, but I'm managing just fine. Are you? Nicole's voice was light, almost sing-song. Because Chris says you're having trouble with the yard work. And the stairs. And didn't you mention your hip was bothering you? It's nothing serious. Mom. Christopher reached across the table and took my hand. We have space. The guest room is just sitting empty. You could stay with us until you're feeling stronger. Just temporarily. I looked at his face so much like Thomas's and I saw real concern there. Love, even. How could I say no to that? Temporarily, I agreed. Nicole smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I moved in 3 weeks later. 2 suitcases, a box of photo albums, and my jewelry box. I told myself it would be a few months at most. At first, I tried to be helpful. I'd wake up early and make breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh coffee. Nicole would come downstairs in her silk robe and say, "Oh, you didn't have to do that," but her tone suggested maybe I shouldn't have. I did laundry. I vacuumed. I wiped down counters and organized the pantry. Nicole started moving things back, rearranging what I'd cleaned. She never said anything directly, just sighed a lot and moved jars around while I watched from the doorway. I learned to ask permission for everything. Is it okay if I do a load of laundry? Is it okay if I make myself some tea? Is it okay if I sit in the living room? The house was always too cold. Nicole kept the thermostat at 65 to save money, and I'd sit in the guest room with a blanket around my shoulders, trying not to shiver. One evening, about 2 months in, I made spaghetti for dinner. It was Christopher's favorite when he was growing up. I used my grandmother's recipe, the one with the secret ingredient, a tablespoon of butter stirred in at the end. Nicole came into the kitchen while I was stirring the sauce. "What are you making?" "Spaghetti. I thought it would be nice to cook tonight." She looked at the pot, then at me. "I already ordered salads for delivery. We're trying to eat lighter." "Oh." I turned off the burner. "I'm sorry. I should have asked." "Yes," she said. "You should have." She left the kitchen. I stood there looking at the pot of sauce, all that work, and slowly began putting it away. That night, I heard them through the wall. Nicole's voice was sharp. "She's rearranging everything. Making a mess. I can't keep up with it. She's just trying to help." Christopher's voice was tired. "Well, she's not helping. She's making everything harder." Silence. Then Christopher, "It's temporary, Nicole. Just until she's stronger." When is she leaving, Chris?" "Because it's been 2 months and I'm losing my mind." I pulled the blanket over my head and closed my eyes. The next morning, I smiled at breakfast and asked if there was anything I could do to help around the house. Nicole smiled back. "Actually, maybe just try to stay out of the way. I have a system." "Of course," I said. "I understand." But I didn't understand. Not really. I was living in a house where I wasn't allowed to cook. Wasn't allowed to clean. Wasn't allowed to exist without asking permission first. I'd become exactly what Nicole called me on that phone. A burden. That night, I took out the deed again. I read my name over and over until the letters blurred. Margaret Ann Bennett, owner. I thought about Thomas. About the porch he built. About the cherry tree still standing in our backyard. And I realized something simple and terrible. I'd left behind everything that proved I was more than a burden. Everything that showed I'd built something. Created something. Mattered. My house wasn't just a building. It was my proof. And I was done living like I didn't deserve to take up space. The realtor's name was Patricia Chen. She was small and efficient, with short hair and a briefcase that clicked when she set it on my kitchen table, my real kitchen table, in my real house, the one I'd driven back to alone. "Mrs. Bennett, I've reviewed the property. Based on comparable sales in the area, I'd estimate market value around $420,000. I'd taken the bus back to Millbrook 3 days after my bank appointment. I told Christopher the first needed to check on the house, make sure the pipes hadn't frozen. He'd barely looked up from his laptop. "Sure, Mom. You need a ride?" "No, thank you. I've arranged it." Nicole didn't even ask where I was going. Now I sat in my own kitchen, in my own chair, and listened to Patricia explain closing costs and listing strategies. Sunlight came through the window over the sink, the same window where I used to watch Christopher play in the backyard. "How quickly can we move?" I asked. Patricia looked up from her papers. "Well, typically we'd recommend staging, professional photos, an open house." "How quickly without all that?" She studied my face. "Are you in a hurry?" "Yes." She closed her folder. "Mrs. Bennett, is everything all right?" I thought about lying, but I was tired of lying. "I need to sell this house before my son realizes I'm serious." Patricia didn't ask any more questions. She just nodded. "I can have it listed by tomorrow morning. Cash buyers, no inspection, we could close in 2 weeks if we're lucky." "Do it," I said. That afternoon, I walked through every room. I started in Christopher's old bedroom. The walls were still pale blue, though the paint was cracking near the ceiling. His old desk sat in the corner, the one Thomas had built from scratch when Christopher turned 12. I ran my hand along the surface, felt the grooves where Christopher had carved his initials when he thought we weren't looking. I stood there for a long time, remembering. In the bathroom, I looked at the tiles Thomas had laid himself. He'd watched YouTube videos for weeks, practicing on scrap pieces in the garage. When he finally installed them, his hands were covered in cuts and his back ached for days. But he'd stood in the doorway when it was finished and smiled like he'd built the Sistine Chapel. "Not bad for a guy who barely graduated high school," he'd said. The master bedroom was harder. Our bed was still there, made with the quilt Thomas's mother had given us as a wedding present. I sat on the edge and looked at his side of the bed, still untouched. I hadn't been able to sleep on it after he died. It felt like trespassing. I opened his nightstand drawer. His reading glasses were still there. A bookmark in a Tom Clancy novel he never finished. A receipt from the hardware store dated 3 days before his heart attack. I took the glasses and put them in my pocket. In the kitchen, I stood at the sink and looked out at the backyard. The cherry tree had grown so tall. Its branches reached toward the house like arms trying to embrace it. Thomas and I had planted that tree the spring Christopher turned 7. We dug the hole together, all 3 of us taking turns with the shovel. Christopher had insisted on watering it himself, lugging the heavy watering can back and forth from the hose until his little arms shook. "This tree's going to be here long after we're gone," Thomas had said, wiping dirt off his hands. "Christopher's kids will climb it someday." I wondered if they ever would now. The next 2 weeks moved both slowly and far too fast. Patricia called every other day with updates. Showings, offers, inspections waived, cash in hand. I drove back and forth between Christopher's house and Millbrook, making excuses each time. Checking on things, sorting through belongings, meeting with the lawyer about Thomas's estate. That last one was actually true. Christopher asked once if everything was okay. "Just paperwork," I said. "Nothing to worry about." He went back to his phone. Nicole never asked at all. 10 days after I listed the house, Patricia called. "We have an offer. $430,000, all cash, no contingencies. They want to close in 5 days." My hands shook. "Accept it. Mrs. Bennett, are you sure? We could potentially get more if we accept it." I hung up and sat in the guest room at Christopher's house, staring at the wall. In 5 days, the house would belong to someone else. The porch Thomas built, the tiles he laid, the tree we planted, all of it would pass to strangers who knew nothing about the life that had happened inside those walls. But it would be mine to give away. Mine to let go, not theirs. 3 days later, Christopher came into the kitchen where I was making tea. Hey Mom, Nicole and I are thinking about taking a trip. Her sister's getting married in Barcelona. That sounds lovely. It's 3 weeks. Will you be okay here alone? I turned to look at him. Really look at him. He looked tired, older than 42. There were lines around his eyes I didn't remember. I'll be fine, I said. You're sure? Because we can cancel if. Christopher. I put my hand on his arm. Go. Enjoy yourself. He smiled, relieved. Thanks, Mom. We leave on Saturday. Saturday was the day after closing. I didn't sleep that night. The closing was scheduled for 10 in the morning at the title company in Portland. I took a taxi from Christopher's house while they were still asleep, my purse heavy with documents. The buyers were a young couple, maybe 30. The wife was pregnant. She kept touching her belly and smiling at her husband. They looked at the house photos on the table like they were looking at their future. I signed my name 27 times. When it was done, the title agent handed me a check. $430,000, minus closing costs and Patricia's commission. Congratulations, Mrs. Bennett. I folded the check and put it in my purse. The young couple stood to leave. The wife turned to me at the door. Thank you so much. We're going to take such good care of your home. I know you will, I said. And I meant it. I took a taxi back to Millbrook one last time. The house was mine for 6 more hours. The new owners took possession at midnight, but they'd agreed to let me have the day to collect my remaining things. I walked through the rooms slowly. I'd already removed most of what I wanted: photos, jewelry, Thomas's glasses, my grandmother's recipe box. What remained were the things too big to take or too painful to carry. Furniture, kitchen appliances, the quilt on the bed. I stood in the living room and looked at the coffee table Thomas had built. I ran my hand along its surface one last time, feeling the smooth wood under my palm. Then I went to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. I sat at the table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals, where Christopher had done his homework, where Thomas and I had paid bills and planned vacations and talked about our dreams, and I wrote one sentence. Sometimes silence speaks louder than screaming. I left the note on the kitchen counter, weighted down with the spare key. Then I picked up my suitcase, took one last look at the cherry tree through the window, and walked out the front door. I didn't lock it. The new owners would do that. I took a taxi to Portland. From Portland, I took a bus north. And from there, I took another taxi to a small town on the coast called Pembridge Harbor. I'd found the apartment online 2 weeks earlier. A 1-bedroom on the 2nd floor of a converted house, with a small balcony that faced the ocean. The rent was cheap because the building was old and the nearest grocery store was 2 miles away. But it had a view. And it was mine. And nobody there knew me as Christopher's mother or Thomas's widow or Nicole's burden. I was just Margaret Bennett. A woman with a suitcase and a check and a whole life still ahead of her. The landlord met me at the door. His name was Frank, and he was 75 if he was a day. You the lady who called about the apartment? Yes. You sure you want it? It's pretty quiet up here. Not much to do. I looked past him at the stairs leading up, at the door that would be mine, at the slice of blue ocean visible through the hallway window. It's perfect, I said. That night, I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea and watched the sun set over the water. The wind was cold and smelled like salt. Seagulls fought over something on the beach below. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Christopher's name. I let it ring. It rang again 5 minutes later. Then again. Then again. I turned the phone off and set it on the small table beside me. They'd be home by now. They'd be standing on the porch of my house, their house. They probably thought, with keys that didn't work and confusion turning slowly into panic. I wondered how long it would take them to read my note. I wondered if Christopher would understand. I wondered if Nicole would feel anything at all. But mostly, I just sat there, breathing in the ocean air, and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Free. I turned my phone back on 5 days after I moved to Pembridge Harbor. 43 missed calls. 67 text messages. 12 voicemails. I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee and started reading. The first texts were from Christopher. "Mom, where are you? Mom, please call me. What happened to the house? Mom, I don't understand." Then they got angrier. "How could you do this? We had an agreement. You can't just sell our house." I stopped reading and looked out at the ocean. A fishing boat moved slowly across the horizon. Gulls circled overhead. "Our house." He'd said our house. I deleted the messages and opened my email instead. That's when I saw it. The subject line read, "Has anyone else dealt with a toxic mother-in-law?" It was a link someone had forwarded to me, my old neighbor Diane, the one who used to bring me casseroles after Thomas died. "Maggie, I don't know if you've seen this. I'm so sorry. Call me if you need anything." I clicked the link. It took me to a post on one of those family drama websites where people share their stories and everyone picks sides in the comments. The post had been up for 2 days. It had been shared 4,000 times. The title was, "My Mill sold our house while we were on vacation, now we're homeless." There was a photo of my house. My cherry tree. My front porch. I started reading. I don't even know where to start. My husband and I took his elderly mother into our home after his father passed away. She was fragile, recovering from surgery, and we thought we were doing the right thing. We gave her a room. We fed her. We included her in everything. My husband even put her name on the deed to his childhood home because he trusted her. Last week, we went to Europe for my sister's wedding. When we came back, strangers were living in our house. The locks were changed. Everything we owned was locked inside. She sold it while we were gone, without telling us. She took the money and disappeared. We've been staying in a motel. We can't afford a lawyer. We lost everything. I'm posting this because I need people to understand elder abuse goes both ways. Just because someone is old doesn't mean they can't be cruel. The comments below were endless. "This is horrific. I'm so sorry. Some people are just evil, no matter their age. You should press charges. What kind of mother does this to her own son?" My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I scrolled down further. Nicole had posted updates, photos of motel rooms, screenshots of their bank account numbers blocked out, but captions like, "completely drained by legal fees." A video of her crying. Christopher was in some of the photos, sitting on a motel bed, looking tired and sad. They'd made me the villain. And thousands of strangers believed them. I set the phone down and stared at the ocean for a long time. Then I picked it back up and dialed a number I'd memorized 40 years ago. Harold Winters answered on the second ring. "Maggie? Is that you?" Harold had been Thomas's best friend since high school. He'd been the best man at our wedding. He'd held Christopher at the hospital the day he was born. After Thomas died, Harold had helped me with the will and the insurance and all the paperwork that comes when someone you love stops existing. He was 74 now, retired from his law practice, but his mind was still sharp as a knife. "Harold, I need help. Tell me everything." I did. The phone call, the house, Nicole's post, all of it. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Do you have proof?" he asked. Anything that shows how they treated you? I don't know. Maybe. Text messages? Emails? I thought about it. Some texts. Nothing dramatic. What about the house itself? Any security cameras? I froze. Maggie? There was a camera, I said slowly. In the living room. Nicole insisted on it for security. It recorded to the cloud. Do you still have access? I think so. She set it up using my email because she said it was easier. Log in, Harold said. Right now. And send me everything from the last 6 months. My hands shook as I opened my laptop. It took me 20 minutes to remember the password. When I finally got in, there were hundreds of recordings. The camera had motion activation. It captured everything. I started scrolling through the files. Most of it was boring. Nicole walking through carrying laundry. Christopher getting ready for work. Me sitting on the couch, reading. Then I found it. The date was 3 weeks before I left. The timestamp said 10:47 p.m. I clicked play. The video showed the living room from an angle near the ceiling. Christopher and Nicole were sitting on the couch. I wasn't in the frame, I was already in bed. Nicole's voice came through clear. I can't do this anymore, Chris. She's always here, always watching, always in the way. She's my mother, Nicole. She's a burden. Nicole's voice was sharp. I didn't marry you to take care of your mother. That wasn't part of the deal. Christopher's voice was quieter. What do you want me to do? I want her gone. I want our house back. I want our life back. She has nowhere else to go. That's not our problem. There was a long pause. Then Christopher said, so softly I almost missed it. Maybe you're right. I stopped the video. I sat there for a long time, staring at the frozen image of my son and his wife. Then I downloaded the file and sent it to Harold. He called back 10 minutes later. Maggie, this changes everything. If she's posting lies about you online, this is defamation. And you have proof she wanted you gone. What do I do? Let me make some calls. Don't respond to anything online. Don't engage. Let them keep talking. Harold, trust me. The more they say, the worse it gets for them. He was right. Over the next week, Nicole posted updates every single day. She started a GoFundMe. She went on a local news segment about elder financial abuse. She recorded TikTok videos crying in her car. The story spread. Blogs picked it up. Reddit threads argued about it. Someone made a meme. And through it all, I stayed silent. Harold called 2 weeks later. They've filed for mediation. They're claiming you owe them $300,000 for stolen property and emotional distress. That's insane. I know. But here's what's going to happen. We're going to go to that mediation. We're going to sit across from them. And we're going to play them that video. Harold, I don't know if I can. Yes, you can. Because you didn't do anything wrong, Maggie. You protected yourself. And now we're going to prove it. The mediation was scheduled at a law office in Portland. I took a bus down the day before and stayed in a cheap hotel that smelled like cigarettes and Pine Sol. I barely slept. The next morning, Harold met me in the lobby. You ready? I nodded, even though I wasn't. The mediation room was small and windowless, with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. The mediator was a woman in her 50s named Ms. Reeves. She had the tired look of someone who'd heard every family horror story imaginable. Christopher and Nicole were already there. This was the first time I'd seen my son in person since the day I left. He looked thinner. His shirt was wrinkled. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Nicole looked perfect. Hair styled. Makeup flawless. Navy dress with pearl buttons. She stared at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. Their lawyer was a young man with an expensive suit and a leather briefcase. He started talking before I even sat down. My clients have suffered tremendous financial and emotional hardship due to Mrs. Bennett's illegal sale of their family home. We're here today seeking fair compensation and the home wasn't theirs, Harold interrupted calmly. Mrs. Bennett was the primary owner. Christopher was listed as co-owner for convenience only. The sale was completely legal. Legal perhaps, but morally reprehensible. Mrs. Bennett betrayed her own son. Did your client tell you that his wife publicly posted defamatory statements about Mrs. Bennett? That she's raised over $40,000 through fraudulent crowdfunding? The young lawyer hesitated. My client exercised her right to share her experience. Her experience included multiple factual lies. Ms. Reeves held up her hand. Gentlemen, let's start from the beginning. Mrs. Bennett, would you like to share your side? I looked at Christopher. He was staring at the table. I was standing at the kitchen sink, I said quietly, when I heard my daughter-in-law call me a burden. Nicole's head snapped up. That's not. The phone was on the counter. Christopher had left it on speaker. I heard everything. Christopher's face went pale. That's ridiculous, Nicole said, but her voice was too high. She's lying. Harold opened his laptop and turned it around. This is footage from your own security camera. Recorded 3 weeks before Mrs. Bennett left. Would you like to watch? The room went completely silent. Ms. Reeves leaned forward. May I? Harold pressed play. Nicole's voice filled the room. She's a burden. I didn't marry you to take care of your mother. That wasn't part of the deal. I watched Nicole's face. The color drained from it. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Christopher closed his eyes. The video kept playing. I want her gone. I want our house back. I want our life back. When it ended, Ms. Reeves sat back in her chair. Mrs. Patterson, is that your voice? Nicole's jaw clenched. I was frustrated. I was venting. Everyone says things they don't mean. You posted online that Mrs. Bennett was treated like family. That she lived in your home. But this video suggests otherwise. I never said I mean, we did treat her. Nicole looked at her lawyer desperately. This is entrapment or something, right? She recorded us without permission. The camera was yours, Harold said. Installed in your own home. By you. Ms. Reeves looked at Christopher. Mr. Bennett, did you know your mother heard this conversation? Christopher finally looked up. His eyes were red. No, he whispered. Did you know she'd heard your wife call her a burden? No. Did you defend your mother when your wife said she wanted her gone? He didn't answer. Ms. Reeves turned to Nicole. Mrs. Patterson, have you raised money online using this story? People wanted to help. How much? Nicole's face hardened. I don't see how that's relevant. $43,000, Harold said. According to the GoFundMe page that's still active. Ms. Reeves wrote something down. Mrs. Patterson, did you tell donors that you'd lost everything? That you were homeless? We were staying in a motel. Did you mention that your husband's mother legally owned the house? That she'd purchased it with her late husband 40 years ago? Silence. Did you mention that your husband was listed on the deed for legal convenience only? Silence. Did you mention that you'd called her a burden and said you wanted her gone? Nicole stood up. This is bullshit. She's a manipulative old woman who turned everyone against us. She destroyed our lives. She saved herself, Harold said quietly. Nicole turned to Christopher. Say something. Defend me. Christopher was staring at me. Mom, he said. His voice cracked. Mom, I'm so sorry. Nicole's head whipped around. What? I knew, Christopher said. Not about the phone call. But I knew Nicole wasn't kind to you. I saw it. And I said nothing. Chris, I told myself it was temporary. That you'd be fine. That we just needed to get through it. He looked at his hands. But I was a coward. Are you serious right now? Nicole's voice was shrill. After everything you what? Christopher looked at her. Really looked at her. Everything you posted online? Everything you lied about? Everything you said about my mother? Nicole grabbed her purse. I don't have to listen to this. She walked out. Her lawyer hesitated, then followed. The door slammed. Ms. Reeves cleared her throat. Well, I think we can consider this mediation concluded. Mr. Bennett, do you wish to continue pursuing damages? Christopher shook his head. No. Mrs. Bennett, do you wish to file a countersuit for defamation? I looked at my son. He looked like he might break. No, I said. Ms. Reeves nodded. Then we're done here. Harold and I stood to leave. Mom. Christopher's voice stopped me at the door. I turned. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know I remember who you are. I remember what you sacrificed. And I'm sorry I forgot. I stood there for a long moment. Then I walked out without saying a word. Because some silences speak louder than anything else. The video leaked 3 days after the mediation. I don't know who did it. Maybe someone at the law office. Maybe the mediator's assistant. Maybe Christopher himself. But suddenly, that recording of Nicole calling me a burden was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, YouTube reaction videos with thumbnails of shocked faces and titles like, "Caught on camera Dill exposed." The internet that had called me heartless and cruel and manipulative turned on a dime. Wait, she owned the house? The Dill called her a burden and then played victim? This poor woman. I hope she's living her best life now. The GoFundMe was taken down within 48 hours. Nicole deleted her social media accounts. The news segment about elder abuse quietly disappeared from the local station's website. People who'd never met me were suddenly defending me in comment sections. Writing think pieces about how society treats elderly women, sharing their own stories of family betrayal. I didn't read most of it. I sat on my balcony in Pembridge Harbor and watched the ocean instead. Harold called once a week to update me. Nicole was facing potential fraud charges for the GoFundMe. Christopher had moved out of the motel and into a small apartment alone. The new owners of my house, the young couple with the pregnant wife, had planted flowers in the front yard. "Are you doing all right, Maggie?" Harold asked during one call. I looked out at the water. A seal was bobbing near the shore, its head sleek and dark against the gray waves. "Yes," I said, "I think I am." "Good. You deserve peace." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time thinking about that word. Peace. I hadn't realized how long I'd been without it. Living in Christopher's house, I'd been constantly braced. Waiting for a sigh, a sharp word, a look that said I was taking up too much space. I'd made myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the shape they wanted. But the shape they wanted was invisible. Here, in this small apartment with its creaky floors and drafty windows, I could breathe. I could make tea at 3 in the morning without asking permission. I could leave my book on the coffee table without someone moving it. I could exist without apology. The first month was the hardest, not because I missed them, but because I was learning how to be alone without being lonely. I walked to the small grocery store in town. The owner, a woman named Ruth, started recognizing me. "You're the new lady in Frank's building, aren't you?" "Yes." "Well, welcome to Pembridge. Don't let the quiet fool you. This town grows on you." She was right. I started walking on the beach every morning. The sand was hard-packed and easy on my hip. I watched fishermen haul in their nets. I learned to tell the difference between the calls of different gulls. I joined a book club at the library. 8 women, all over 60, who met every Thursday afternoon to drink tea and argue about plot holes. One of them, a retired teacher named Carolyn, asked me one day how I'd ended up in Pembridge. Long story, I said. We've got time, she said, smiling. So I told them, not everything, but enough. When I finished, Carolyn reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, she said. Sometimes saving yourself looks like abandonment to people who were counting on you to drown quietly. I thought about that for days afterward. 6 weeks after the mediation, a letter arrived. I recognized Christopher's handwriting on the envelope. I made myself a cup of tea, sat on the balcony, and opened it. Dear Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if I deserve for you to read this. But I need to say it anyway. I failed you. Not just in the end. Not just with Nicole. I failed you for years. After Dad died, I told myself I was being helpful by inviting you to stay with us. But really, I just didn't want to deal with the guilt of leaving you alone. I wanted to feel like a good son without actually being one. I saw how Nicole treated you. I heard the comments, saw the looks, felt the coldness. And I did nothing. I told myself it was temporary. That you'd be fine. That keeping the peace was more important than standing up for you. I was wrong. You weren't a burden, Mom. You never were. You raised me. You built a home for me. You buried Dad and kept going. You survived and kept giving, even when no one gave back. And I repaid you by letting someone call you a burden in your own son's house. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to call or write back. I just need you to know that I remember who you really are. I remember you teaching me to ride a bike on our street, running beside me until I found my balance. I remember you sitting up with me all night when I had the flu, putting cold washcloths on my forehead. I remember you and Dad building that house with your own hands, painting every wall, planting that cherry tree. I remember your laugh. The one Dad said made bad days bearable. I miss it. I miss you. Nicole and I are getting divorced. That's not your fault, it was inevitable. I think I always knew she wasn't kind. I just didn't want to admit I'd chosen someone who didn't value the things you and Dad taught me to value. I'm selling the apartment and moving to a smaller place. Starting over. Maybe that's what I should have done a long time ago. I hope you're happy, wherever you are. I hope you're somewhere with a view and good coffee and people who see you the way I should have seen you. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry I forgot to show it. Christopher. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the drawer beside Thomas's reading glasses. I didn't write back. Not because I was angry. Not because I couldn't forgive. But because some things don't need a response. Some things just need to be said and released into the world, like a message in a bottle thrown into the ocean. Whether it washes up on shore or sinks to the bottom doesn't matter. What matters is that it was sent. I thought about calling him. I wrote replies in my head a dozen times. But every time I reached for the phone, I stopped. Because the truth was, I didn't know what to say yet. And that was okay. 3 months after I moved to Pembridge Harbor, I woke up on a Tuesday morning and realized I was happy. Not in a loud, celebrating way. Just in a quiet, steady way that felt like sunshine through a window. I made coffee. I walked on the beach. I bought fresh bread from the bakery and ate it with butter while sitting on my balcony. The ocean was calm that day. The sky was the kind of blue that makes you remember why people paint. I thought about the house. The cherry tree. Thomas. Christopher. Nicole. All of it. And for the first time, I felt something other than grief or anger or sadness. I felt peace. The house was gone, but it had served its purpose. It had kept us warm. It had held our memories. And in the end, it had saved me. Thomas was gone, but he'd given me 43 years of love and laughter and partnership. He'd taught me that I was worth building a life with. Christopher was somewhere out there, learning his own lessons, fighting his own battles. Maybe one day we'd talk again. Maybe one day I'd be ready. But I didn't need that day to come for me to be whole. Because I'd learned something important in that guest room, in that kitchen, in that moment when I heard myself called a burden. I was never the weight they were carrying. I was the foundation holding everything up. I was the one who cooked meals and painted walls and planted trees. I was the one who loved even when love wasn't returned. I was the one who sacrificed and gave and bent until I nearly broke. And when I finally stood up straight, they couldn't stand without me. That's not a burden. That's a pillar. People spend their whole lives trying not to be too much. Too loud. Too needy. Too present. Especially women. Especially mothers. Especially women who've reached an age where society decides they're no longer valuable. We shrink ourselves. We apologize for existing. We try to take up less space so everyone else has more room. But here's what I learned. You cannot make someone love you by becoming smaller. You cannot earn respect by disappearing. You cannot build a relationship by erasing yourself. The people who love you will make space for you. They won't ask you to shrink. They won't call you a burden. They won't make you feel like you're asking too much by simply existing. And the people who do? They're showing you exactly who they are. Believe them. I'm 70 years old now. 3 years have passed since I left that house, that life, that version of myself who apologized for breathing. I still live in Pembridge Harbor. I still walk on the beach every morning. I still drink my coffee on the balcony and watch the gulls fight over scraps. Ruth from the grocery store is my friend now. She brings me tomatoes from her garden. Carolyn from book club invited me to Thanksgiving last year. I went. Frank, my landlord, fixed my leaky faucet and wouldn't let me pay him. Said neighbors help neighbors. I have a life here. A small one, maybe. But it's mine. Christopher and I talk now. Not often. Once a month, maybe. Short calls where we discuss the weather and his new job and whether I need anything. It's not what it was. It will never be what it was. But it's something. And something is enough. He asked me once if I regretted it. Selling the house. Leaving. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. No, I said. I regret waiting so long. There's a young woman who lives in the apartment below mine. Her name is Sophie. She's 26, just starting out. She reminds me of myself at that age, hopeful and scared and trying to figure out how to be a person in a world that doesn't always make room. Last week, she knocked on my door crying. Her boyfriend had called her too sensitive. Said she was making a big deal out of nothing. I made her tea. I let her cry. And then I told her something I wish someone had told me 50 years ago. You're not too sensitive. You're not too much. You're exactly right. And anyone who makes you feel otherwise is the problem, not you. She looked at me with red eyes and asked, "How do you know when to leave?" I thought about that kitchen. That phone call. That moment of perfect, terrible clarity. You'll know, I said. And when you do, don't wait. Don't shrink. Don't apologize. Just go. I'm telling you this story for a reason. If you're reading this or listening to this, wherever you are and you feel like a burden, I want you to hear me. You're not. You never were. You're not too much. You're not asking for too much. You're not taking up too much space. You're a whole person who deserves to be treated like one. And if the people around you can't see that, it says nothing about your worth and everything about their blindness. I spent 67 years trying to be small enough, quiet enough, unobtrusive enough to deserve love. And in the end, I learned that the only person I needed to prove my worth to was myself. So here I am, Margaret Ann Bennett, 70 years old, living in a small apartment by the ocean, reading books, drinking tea, watching the waves. I'm not waiting for anyone to come save me. I already did that myself. And if that's not a happy ending, I don't know what is. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it wasn't always easy to hear. But I hope it reminded you that you're stronger than you think, and that it's never too late to choose yourself. If this story touched you, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe to the Grandparents' Memories and Life channel. Hit that like button, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Your support means everything, and it helps stories like mine reach people who need them most. Remember, you're not a burden. You're a pillar. Don't ever forget it.